By mid-1800s, the U.S. had been immersed in the widespread use of slavery as a tool to assist the economy. The slavery market expanded to a point where the slaveholders needed women to work in household chores and unskillful agricultural work to let the stronger gender work on the manual labor. Women's slavery in south of the United States was brutal, taking into account the sexual abuse, the change in family structure, and the intensity of their work.
When we think about women taking the role of men's slaves, an important issue arises when it comes to the family structure. The family structure of African families was affected by the increasing demand for women by the slave owners in the U.S. Although the pregnant slave was given certain privileges while she was bearing a child, whether it was extra food or sometimes even care by the owner's wife, once the woman had given birth, she was not only to work but also to take care of her own child. The idea of marriage based on a couple's love vanished once women became the ideal target of slave owners. Planters were becoming aware that they could profit economically by promoting the families their slaves were struggling to create. In little less than a century, races were mixed due to slavery's transformation in the family structure. The percentage of black kids who had one or both parents missing almost doubled that of the white race.
The same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property. So that when you see a Negro today who's named Johnson, if you go back in his history, you'll find that he was once his grandfather or one of his forefathers was owned by a white man who was named Johnson. If his name is Bunch, his grandfather was owned by a white man that was named Bunch.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
My father didn't know his last name. My father got his last name from his grandfather, and his grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed during slavery.
Was there any line, any point?
Women's slavery opened path not only to sexual abuse and the change in family structure, but also to women being seen in work fields. Women often worked the same labor and hours as male slaves on top of their mother's duties with their own children. Young adult women had value over and above their ability to work in the fields. They were able to have children who by law were also slaves of the owner of the mother. And so was the reason why women went from being the weakest link to the top of the workforce pyramid. The cotton fields was where they most demanded, and due to the skillful and delicate work the cotton production demands. It is clear that the amount of work placed on these innocent slave women was obscene and affected them in numerous ways, all adding to the irrational development of the slave movement in regard to women.
Throughout history, slavery has been considered the cruelest and most unfair act in humanity. The slave market extended to a huge point where even female slaves were used for the workforce, exploited harshly by their own masters. They not only worked on tedious labor, but they also worked on household chores. It is easy to conclude that the treatment of women in south of the United States was extremely brutal due to sexual abuse, the changing pattern in family structure, and lastly, the intensity of their work.